Here at the Abrahamic Family House, a place that powerfully symbolizes our shared values and the beauty of interfaith understanding. This evening's session is not simply about machines, it is about meaning, about how our spiritual, psychological, and ethical traditions can guide us in shaping a future where technology can serve humanity. To officially open this evening's program, it's my great honor to invite His Excellency Dr. Ali Rashid Alnuaimi, Chairman of Manara Center for Coexistence and Dialogue, to deliver his opening remarks.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good evening, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First, I'd like to welcome you to this place, which is I'm really proud of to be part of it. And every week I have to come here to refresh my vision, my soul, and my attitude toward humanity. Today we gather here, and I'd like to thank MBZ University for Artificial Intelligence, to thank my team in Manara, and also to thank the host, the Abrahamic Family House, and the team. They're doing a great job in it. We are here to talk about faith and artificial intelligence. I've been engaging with, dealing with faith leaders, and always I face challenges when I talk about faith leaders and their role. Many, whenever you talk about religious leaders, faith leaders, they say, oh, why do you want to engage them? Do we need them? We are in the 21st century. And here we are in an era where the trend is the artificial intelligence. Everybody is talking about artificial intelligence. This is the future in all sectors. And they underestimate the relationship between what can faith leaders do and play, and what all those who are in charge of developing. I'm not talking about the machine. I'm talking about the mind behind this machine. When we talk about faith leaders, we have to understand that 84% of the world population, they follow religion. And this is where, when you exclude faith leaders, you underestimate their influence. You underestimate what they can do, and you isolate them, and you send the wrong message to them that they are not accepted. They don't have a role. And this is where, don't ever think that these faith leaders, because of what you think about them, they will sit at home and say, okay, you do whatever you want. No. There is the role they play. And we have to respect their role, and engage with them. And when it's come to artificial intelligence, we have to understand it's not a machine. And those faith leaders, we have to explain to them how can they utilize the AI, how they can use it actually as a platform to engage with their followers, to build bridges between different faiths. The human being, any person, whenever you face challenges, when you suffer from something, where do you go? You don't go to the machine. You go to your faith to refresh. You go to your faith to empower you. You go to your faith to find solution and to help you come over the challenges. And this is where I want everyone to understand that you can't exclude faith from anything related to any development in any community, in any society, in any nation. And this is where, dealing with faith leaders, building bridges with them, showing them that there is a role for them to play, and bringing them forward to engage with who? With those who are creating the future, those who are in charge of the artificial intelligence. This is where, for us, when Bakhita came, where is Bakhita? Came and told me that I have a proposal to bring MBZR University with Manara to talk about something that we have to build a bridge between these two major players. I know I don't need to make an argument about the importance of artificial intelligence, but I think it's very important for me to make the argument to convince everyone about the importance and the role of faith leaders. Thank you very much for being here. And when I talk about faith, I am inclusive. I don't exclude any faith. We need to engage everyone. We need to show that we care about everyone, and we need to show respect to all faith. Thank you very much.
Now, we move into our panel discussion. Our esteemed panelists are already on stage, and I'm honored to invite the moderator to begin the conversation.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me clearly from the back? A bit low? Yes. Much better? Perfect. My name is Abdullahi Alim from the Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence, and I'll be helping moderate today's discussion. Just by show of hands, who here can identify some of the big titans from the Islamic Open Era? For example, the Al-Khwarizmis of the world. I think the beauty of figures of that time was that they were able to blend studies of science, not just in a particular silo, but they were able to pair it with understandings of philosophy. They were able to blend those studies with traditions of faith, and they were able ultimately to also have very intimate discussions about how we relate to information, how we relate to change. And I think when you look at the lineage of the big information and technological breakthroughs that we've had, from the printing press all the way up until now, every single major technological breakthrough, every single information breakthrough has demanded us to look at ways in which we can intersect both the technical with the deeply philosophical. Being able to hold conversations about medicine with conversations about mysticism, conversations about physics with conversations about faith, dialogues around science with dialogues about spirituality. And I think today's discussion is no different. AI, as our view at the Academy at Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence, it's as much a study about machines as it is a study about man. It's as much a study about statistical models as it is about how we as individuals relate to information, who has access to it, how do we store it, how do we disseminate knowledge, and also how we relate to the concept of change and disruption. And we're confronted by major historic window as we are now. Do we rescind to fear and feel paralyzed by it, thinking it's too scary, it's too big, I can't contend with the unknown? Or do we lead with more of an intellectual curiosity and humility? Today's conversation is an opportunity for us to understand what do some of the oldest surviving faith traditions, spiritual traditions, teach us and how we can engage in this historic window as well. And I think to your credit, you've got a very, very interesting and eclectic panel at your discretion. I'm going to ask each of them to just quickly introduce themselves in a second. But I'll also ask each of you to engage this conversation as intimately as possible. We will also have a dedicated Q&A towards the end of the discussion as well. So I'll start with Dr. Yusuf. Share a bit about yourself.
Mic working? So I work for the UAE Council of Fatwa. I work as a specialist in religious sciences there. Most of my daily work is kind of providing pastoral care. So we basically provide, the word fatwa can trigger a few people who aren't quite familiar with what it means. It basically is religious opinion. And the Fatwa Council is one of the national bodies of religious opinion here. So I provide religious opinion, which could be anything from marital counseling to financial transactions, both in written print and also by the phone. So that's my day job.
Hello everyone, can you hear me clearly? Great. Yeah, I'm Eric Xing. So I'm an engineer and a researcher doing my work in artificial intelligence. I'm also the president of the University of Artificial Intelligence, working with my colleague to build research programs and bigger national scale projects using AI. Beyond my career as a scientist, in fact, I'm a great fan of history, culture, philosophy, and religion. So I love to be able to contribute to the discussion about faith and science and technology.
Good evening. My name is Rabbi Jeff Bircher. I'm the religious leader of the Moses Ben Maimon Synagogue here in the Family House. In my spare time, I also like to engage in questions of science and technology.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Churchill, and excuse me, I am setting up a new department at the Mohammed bin Zayed University with the support of Professor Eric Xing. And my department is focused on human-computer interaction. And the university is deeply committed to understanding how we build AI. What are the values that go in, not just the engineering? Who we build for? And also, I like to think of it as how do we build for AI? Meaning, how does AI communicate to us and become transparent, become conversational, become something that we can actually understand ourselves. In my spare time, I like to think of myself as an anthropologist. I love humans, I love my species, I love who we are, and I love to think about how we can be better together. So that's my kind of passion in life.
Hi, my name is Will Barkley, and I serve as one of the pastors of the Evangelical Church, one of the associate pastors there. I've been here 4 years, and I serve at the Evangelical Church, which has been in this country for 53 years. It's not all over the country, 52 years. And I'm very thankful to be here. I'm very much interested in this topic. I consider myself kind of a technology person until I got really old, and now I can't work my iPhone as well as my kids. But this is a very interesting discussion. I'm very excited to participate on the panel.
So Professor Eric, help around today's discussion. Can you help us demystify what AI is in some sense and what it isn't?
Thank you for the questions. Yeah, I want to be a little more careful today in terms of defining what is AI, because many of the terminologies now used in AI remind me something that is not AI. You heard about words like learning, like reasoning, which are the privileged skill and the ground jewel of human intelligence. And now we lend all these words to ChatGPT and to all the AI-enabled machinery. So here I want to avoid using those words. Okay, what is AI? Without using these words to describe it. So AI, to the best of my capability of describing it, is a very fancy and complicated piece of algorithm. Okay, this algorithm can be programmed and can be implemented to demonstrate certain capabilities, which reminds you about what human intelligence is able to achieve. For example, what does that mean? When you saw a aircraft flying, okay, it is flying. The word flying suggests you, in fact, not just something floating in the air and moving. It is a behavior or an action that a certain animal can do, right? But an aircraft, is that flying? It's actually a very questionable thing. That's why we say, does AI do reasoning? Does AI learn? It is probably not even the right question. The right question we as engineer, as a scientist, usually ask AI is that, does AI as a piece of algorithm, as a piece of software, solve a problem I want to solve? And that problem may require human intelligence. But when I solve it with a piece of software, with a piece of algorithm, it may not be using the type of intelligence or type of reasoning that you do. So I'll give you a few examples that you already see AI in your daily life. For example, when you do now driving, you have the Google Map. Okay, behind the Google Map is an AI algorithm, okay, which tells you where you are, where to go, what is the best path or route to either avoid traffic or to get you there with the shortest amount of distance or gasoline mileage and so forth. So that's an AI algorithm. If you look at the airport traffic control center, there's an AI algorithm because there are too many aircrafts and too many passengers, too many gates, and only 2 runways, right? And how can you now, let go the aircraft, or land the aircraft every 30 seconds? This is something that the human being cannot do because our brain are not very good at doing this calculation. And the AI algorithm is actually doing that by running an algorithm that solves what we know mathematically as a bounded optimization problems. Right? Yeah. So AI is such a thing. It's basically a cluster of algorithms which can be programmed into a piece of software and running on computers and solve very, very specific problems or some very generic problems. So I gave you a few examples of being very specific, like a Google Map, or maybe a aircraft or an airport controller. But ChatGPT is yet another AI algorithm. Okay, it is a very general-purpose algorithm to simulate human linguistic behaviors. It's a simulator of human linguistic behaviors. It simulates in such a way that whenever you prompt with your questions, it gives you something back as if you are talking to a person, as if. Okay. Whether I give it back to you something that I understand is irrelevant, as long as your experience reminds you or gets you very close to what you expect from a human being. And the way the large language model or the ChatGPT does it is actually very different from the way you do it. Why? Because when we train a ChatGPT or when we train large language model, we throw at that algorithm all the books, all the texts ever written in civilization from the antiquity, the genesis of the language until now. So that machine has a huge memory, also has a very fast retrieval method, so that they can remember everything. They can remember in every word what next word has been ever placed before or after that. Okay, and then whenever you ask a couple of words, I'm going to basically find a way to discover and retrieve all the other words ever spoken next to the words that you put there. And then I do some other optimization to make it sound like a human communication, and I give it back to you. So that's basically ChatGPT. Is that intelligent? Well, it is very, very intelligent because it knows knowledges that you don't know because they read books that you have never read, and they also remember it better than you remember it. But it is doing the so-called machine reasoning or AI reasoning differently from the human reasoning. We human beings are optimized for limited bandwidth, limited memory, and limited energy computation. For example, people ask me why first principle is important. Why we need to be convinced when first principle is used. For example, when I show you a Newtonian law of, say, universal gravitation, you feel like it's so beautiful and it is so correct. It makes you feel like you believe in that hypothesis, right? The reason we need that is because we cannot remember all the positions of the celestial bodies, all the celestial body movements and so forth, and we try to reduce them into a piece of equation, which can be easily stored in your brain because that will save us a lot of energy. Okay, but AI does not have to do that. They can literally remember all the positions if they need to. And they can store the equation if there is one, but also they don't have to store an equation if there's no one. For example, when AI does the conversation, it does not use human grammatical rules, okay, or other parsing rules and so forth. It is a brute force retrieval, of other laws. But when AI does some, computation, like what we see nowadays, in the math, AI programs, they sometimes use the rules. Yeah. So remember, AI is a piece of algorithm which accomplishes the task you wanted to accomplish. It is not necessarily a creature that can invent tasks all of itself and then get a solution like we humans do in our own ways. Maybe hopefully this is a more kind of grounded answer on what AI really is about.
Exactly. And Rabbi Jeff, we saw during the pandemic there was something called an AI rabbi that was released. And it was based on the idea that no single rabbi can remember every single Jewish law and every single Jewish tradition. But I think we had a very interesting conversation with the senior rabbi, Rabbi Franklin from New York, who said, interestingly, this can't replace a human because this AI lacks nefesh, or Hebrew for soul. So I'm curious to know, I'm opening this conversation for all of us here. What is distinctively human in each of our faith traditions, or even our own understandings, that cannot be sort of replicated within a machine? How distinct are we and why?
Thank you, Abdullahi. I want to begin by saying that 2,000 years ago, during the period of antiquity, there was a Rabbi Hanina, the vice high priest of the temple in Jerusalem, who said, "Pray for the welfare of the government, for were it not for the rule of law, every person would swallow their neighbor alive." I digress for a moment to say that each week in the Moses Ben Maimon Synagogue, we pray for the well-being of His Highness, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and the entire government of the UAE, for the remarkable country that they created, which is a beacon of hope, demonstrating how more than 200 different cultures can coexist peacefully. That's the first thing to say. I feel grateful to be here. Certainly my thanks to the Mohammed bin Zayed University and also to the Manara Center. In the Jewish tradition, it is believed, this might be a bit homiletics, but please bear with me. It is believed that 40 days before the birth of a child, a developing fetus is taught the wisdom of the entire universe by an angel in the womb. Now, upon birth, the angel is said to lightly tap the baby's upper lip, causing the child to forget all that it has learned, and leaving with us this groove called the philtrum. From that point of view, forgetting is not a negative thing. It allows us to rediscover the wisdom that we will eventually encounter during our life with a fresh perspective and a renewed appreciation. It is suggesting that we are subconsciously endowed with knowledge, just as a seed contains the DNA within it, which will later become the blossoming plant and flower. Humans are unique in having the capacity for higher consciousness. We believe that we are endowed with a soul and that we are created in the image of the divine, so that when we encounter truth later in our lives, we innately recognize it. Some of the characteristics of being human would be, or include, being born of a woman, having moral intelligence, being able to produce offspring, having imagination, free will, creativity, the capacity for interlocution, self-reflection, empathy, and yet being finite and still having a unique identity. That would be what I believe are some of the things that machines cannot yet replicate.
is interesting because when most people are asked, if you were to go to a court case and stand before either an AI or a jury of people, most people prefer the jury of people. Inherently because we feel like there's something empathetic within the human experience that perhaps you won't necessarily get from something programmed in a different sense. So, Professor Elizabeth, how do you engage with that question? What is innately human that is distinct from machine?
I think you just said something really important. You said a jury. And we can empathize, and if we can't empathize, often what we do is we have discussions with others in order to develop empathy. So when we think of ourselves as individuals, that is not who we really are. We are actually a collective. We are empathetic. We work with others. We get multi-perspectival views through conversation and discussion. We see through other people's eyes as they talk to us, talk through with us, as we experience with them through empathy, through observation, through discussion. And I think a lot of the machines that we know don't discuss, they don't empathize with each other, they don't change their views on the basis of, what was your experience, machine A? Well, my experience was like this. Oh, I'm not sure if you were quite right. Well, that's interesting. Why? So information is exchanged, but I don't think it's that same kind of embodied experience and co-experience and collaborative experience of being together. Look at us here. Take a look around. We're all here with different backgrounds, different views, different ideas. Some of you are worrying about doing washing up later. Some of you are worrying about what's happening tomorrow. Some of us are worrying about what is happening in the world and how do we fit into the world. This is incredibly rich. We are not individuals. We are a collective that exchanges and discusses. And arguably, I would like to think that we are doing more of this. We need more of this, and that our capacity to expand in that way, I think, is unique.
There's very interesting discussions. Whenever we talk about AI, people talk about replacement, interestingly. And Pastor, a question for you, Pastor, was that when we looked at a study from the Harvard Business Review, and I put it on the screen now, looking at how particularly young people use generative AI, so, for example, like ChatGPT, you find that the three core prompts that they use for these LLMs in particular was, number one, therapy and companionship, number two, organizing my life, and number three, finding my purpose. These are very traditional functions of community leaders, faith leaders, counselors. How do you relate to this? Do you take almost like this is replicating, potentially replacing the function and utility of faith leaders, or do you think this speaks to a deeper epidemic in our countries?
Yeah, great question. I do think, I still have a job in 5 years, thankfully. I think that for people in general, and people in my kind of position, whether a pastor, a mentor, a rabbi, there's a need for an embodied soul to be with you and to explain things to you. I think as human beings, we are wanting to communicate with fellow human beings. I think that one of the problems with technology these days and with our phones is that it's really easy to send that WhatsApp message. But are we really communicating or connecting on that level where we're building that relationship? We have a satisfactory relationship with that person. If I just texted my wife once a week that I loved her and never saw her, I don't think she'd say that I was being a good husband. But I think the temptation nowadays, especially when you think about something like a generative AI, like ChatGPT, for an 18-year-old man, I give that example as just somebody in my congregation who is interacting with it and has developed maybe a friendship or a relationship with an AI. It's tempting, and it's tempting because you're using language. You're typing in your thoughts, and you're getting human language back, whatever language it is. And so I think there's a real temptation to think, I am interacting with somebody, a being. And I feel like since we've had conversations, I feel like I've read more and more articles about people who have gotten into relationships with generative AI And it's caused them to do things that would be considered rational, really jeopardizing actual relationships they have. So I do think that as human beings, to me that speaks, we crave to be known, to know others, to matter to other people, and that's why human relationships are so important. And yet, that's why I think a generative AI can be very tempting and really dangerous when we assume that we are interacting with a real person, a real human being.
The fact that it's the case, the fact that people are using this, as you can see, top 3, therapy, finding purpose, finding meaning. As somebody who leads a congregation, what do you think this, I mean, how do you relate to this kind of data?
You know, that's a great question. And I do think that there's probably a tendency in all of us, like, to find a shortcut. I want the answer to the next step. I want to know what I should do next. And maybe it used to be a crystal ball. I talked about this idea. There's a magic 8-ball as a kid where if you asked it a question, you turned it over, it would float up this little dice and it had 20 questions, yes or no, and it would just tell you whatever random question that would float. I think there's a tendency in all of us to want a simple answer. And ChatGPT or any of these generative AIs, in one sense, it's like you can type it in and there's no accountability. Who's going to know that you asked that question? Who's going to find out? So I do think there's a temptation in human beings in general to, I would even say for people in my congregation, it's almost an idolatry, right? If God is real and he exists to impart wisdom, as we know in Proverbs, and to help his people, and yet why do we run to then other things that are not God, that I don't think are going to help us like we want them to?
Dr. Yusuf, how do you engage with this piece of data? Seeing that most people are using it at least for finding purpose, for therapeutic reasons, for companionship.
I mean, I connected with what the pastor said, specifically the part